Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the most fascinating stories from history. And tonight, we're embarking on perhaps the most deliciously dark journey you've ever imagined. So grab your favorite blanket, get comfortable, in your bed, or wherever you're relaxing tonight, because we're about to uncover the shocking truth about what pirates really ate and drank during their blood-soaked adventures on the high seas. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll never look at your dinner the same way again. Let-moi subscribe. Me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Whether you're winding down after a long day, studying late into the night, or just looking for something fascinating to drift off to sleep with, you're in exactly the right place. And I promise this journey through pirate cuisine will be unlike anything you've heard before. Now, before we begin, I want you to imagine for just a moment that you're standing on the creaking wooden deck of a pirate ship in the year 1720, the salt spray hitting your face, the sun beating down mercilessly, and your stomach growling with a hunger so intense it feels like a wild animal clawing at your insides, because what I'm about to tell you will completely shatter every romanticized notion you've ever had about pirate life, starting with the absolutely horrifying reality of what these seafaring criminals were forced to consume just to survive another day. The truth about pirate food is so much stranger, more disgusting, and more fascinating than any Hollywood movie has ever dared to show. And it begins with a substance so vile, so crawling with maggots, and so rotten that most people today would rather starve than take a single bite. Yet for pirates, this putrid mess was often the difference between life and death. Picture this nightmare scenario that thousands of real pirates lived through. You're 3 months into a voyage across the Atlantic. Your ship's food stores are running dangerously low. And when you crack open what should be a barrel of perfectly good salt pork instead, you're greeted by a writhing mass of white maggots. A stench so powerful it makes your eyes water, and meat so green and slimy it looks like something that crawled out of a swamp. But here's the shocking part that will make your skin crawl. Pirates didn't just throw this rotten meat overboard. They ate it anyway, maggots and all, because in their twisted world of survival, protein was protein, no matter how many legs it had or how much it squirmed. The hardtack biscuits that formed the backbone of every pirate's diet were essentially edible rocks that could break your teeth if you bit them wrong. And these weren't just stale crackers we're talking about. These were thick, cement-hard squares of flour and water that had been baked until they were virtually indestructible, designed to last for months or even years without spoiling. But here's where it gets absolutely disgusting. After weeks at sea, these hardtack biscuits would become infested with weevils, small brown beetles that would burrow deep into the biscuit and lay their eggs, turning your dinner into a crunchy, protein-rich nightmare that would wiggle in your mouth as you chewed. Pirates developed an entire ritual around eating weevil-infested hardtack. They would tap the biscuits against the table to knock out as many bugs as possible, though they knew it was impossible to get them all, and then they would dunk the hardtack in whatever liquid they had available, whether it was watered-down rum, brackish water, or even their own urine in desperate situations. Anything to soften these tooth-breaking survival crackers enough to actually swallow them without choking. The psychological impact of eating bugs became so normalized among pirate crews that many sailors actually preferred their hardtack with weevils because the extra protein helped them maintain their strength during long voyages. And some old-time pirates would joke that the weevils were the only fresh meat they'd taste for months. A grim humor that reveals just how desperate and dehumanizing life aboard a pirate ship really was. But the maggoty meat and bug-infested biscuits were just the beginning of the culinary horrors that awaited anyone brave or foolish enough to join a pirate crew, because when you're floating in the middle of an endless ocean with no way to preserve fresh food and no guarantee of when you'll next see land, you quickly learn that the normal rules of what's edible and what's not simply don't apply. Salt pork and salt beef formed the cornerstone of pirate nutrition when they could get it. But the salting process that was supposed to preserve these meats for long sea voyages was primitive and unreliable, often resulting in chunks of pork and beef that were so saturated with salt they would burn your mouth and throat, leaving you desperately thirsty but with only contaminated water to drink, creating a vicious cycle of dehydration and nausea that would weaken even the strongest. Pirates over time, when the salted meat wasn't salty enough, it would rot and putrefy in the ship's hot, humid cargo hold, developing a green slime coating and a smell so putrid that it could be detected from several decks away. Yet pirates would still scrape off the worst of the rot, cut away the greenest parts, and cook what remained into a stew that barely qualified as food, seasoning it with whatever spices they had stolen from merchant ships to mask the taste of decay. The process of preparing rotten meat became an art form among pirate cooks, who learned to identify which parts of a piece of putrid pork might still be salvageable, and which parts would literally poison the crew if consumed, walking a dangerous line between nutrition and toxicity with every meal they prepared. Fresh water was perhaps even more precious than food aboard a pirate ship, and the methods pirates used to obtain and store drinking water reveal just how desperate their situation really was, because unlike the romanticized image of pirates constantly drinking rum, the reality was that fresh water was so valuable that captains would sometimes choose to attack a ship solely for its water barrels, rather than its gold. Water stored in wooden barrels for weeks or months would become stagnant and green with algae, developing a slimy texture and a taste so foul that it would make you gag. But pirates had no choice but to drink it anyway, often mixing it with whatever alcohol they had available to kill some of the bacteria and make the taste slightly more bearable. The art of water rationing became crucial to pirate survival, with strict rules about how much each crew member could drink per day, and violations of these water rations were often punishable by death, because running out of drinking water in the middle of the ocean was essentially a death sentence for the entire crew. Pirates would collect rainwater whenever possible, stretching canvas sheets and sails to catch every precious drop during storms. But this rainwater often became contaminated with tar, salt spray, and bird droppings from the ship's rigging, creating a brown, foul-tasting liquid that was barely better than seawater, but was treated like liquid gold by desperate crews. When water supplies ran critically low, pirates would resort to drinking their own urine, a practice that provided temporary relief, but ultimately made dehydration worse, and in the most extreme cases, crews would draw lots to determine who would be killed and eaten by the survivors. Though these instances of cannibalism were rare and typically only occurred during the most desperate circumstances when all other food sources had been exhausted. The daily routine of eating aboard a pirate ship was nothing like the communal feasts you might imagine. Instead, it was a grim, practical affair where crew members would gather around large cauldrons of what they called sea pie or lobscouse, thick stews made from whatever ingredients happened to be available. Whether that was rotten meat, weevil-infested hardtack, stolen vegetables that were already going bad, or even rats that had been caught in the ship's hold. Rats were actually considered a delicacy by many pirate crews because they provided fresh meat and were relatively easy to catch. And experienced ship's cooks knew dozens of ways to prepare rat meat, from simple roasting over an open fire to elaborate stews that mixed rat with whatever vegetables or grains were available, and the taste was often described as similar to chicken or rabbit. Though the psychological barrier of eating rodents was something that took most new pirates weeks or months to overcome, the hierarchy of food distribution aboard pirate ships was surprisingly democratic compared to other sailing vessels of the era, with most crews operating under articles or codes that guaranteed equal food rations for all members, regardless of rank, though the captain and officers might receive slightly better portions or first choice of whatever fresh food was available when ships were captured or ports were raided. Meal times were often the only moments of relative peace and camaraderie aboard these violent ships, as even the most hardened pirates would gather together to share their meager rations and tell stories, sing songs, or plan their next raid, creating brief islands of humanity in what was otherwise a brutal and dehumanizing existence. The cooking facilities aboard most pirate ships were primitive at best, consisting of little more than a brick-lined firebox called a galley, where the ship's cook would prepare meals for dozens or even hundreds of hungry crew members using whatever. Ingredients were available, and these cooks, despite their crucial role in keeping the crew alive, were often among the most hated men aboard the ship because they were blamed for every bad meal, every case of food poisoning, and every rumbling stomach. Ship's cooks had to be incredibly resourceful and creative, learning to make edible meals from ingredients that most people would consider inedible. And they developed countless tricks for disguising the taste and texture of rotten food, from heavy use of stolen spices to long cooking times that would break down tough, spoiled meat into something that could at least be swallowed. The spice trade was one of the primary motivations for pirate attacks on merchant vessels, not just because spices were valuable for resale, but because they were essential for making the ship's terrible food supply even minimally palatable. And pirates would risk their lives attacking heavily defended spice ships just to get their hands on pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, and other seasonings that could transform a pot of rotten stew into something that resembled actual food. When pirates were lucky enough to capture a ship carrying livestock, the brief period of fresh meat that followed was like a holiday celebration, with crews feasting on fresh beef, pork, or chicken until the animals were gone. But these moments of abundance were rare and brief, often lasting only a few days before the crew was back to their usual diet of maggoty hardtack and putrid salt meat. The process of slaughtering and butchering animals aboard a ship was messy and dangerous, with blood and offal creating slippery conditions on deck that could easily lead to accidents in rough seas. But pirates had no choice but to process their fresh meat immediately, since they had no way to keep live animals healthy for extended periods in the cramped, unsanitary conditions aboard their ships. Even the blood from slaughtered animals was too precious to waste, being collected and cooked into blood puddings or mixed with oatmeal to create a protein-rich porridge that, while disgusting to modern sensibilities, provided essential nutrients that helped prevent scurvy and other nutritional diseases that plagued long sea voyages. The constant threat of scurvy hung over every pirate crew like a death sentence, because this disease, caused by a lack of vitamin C, would gradually rob pirates of their teeth, their strength, and eventually their lives, beginning with bleeding, gums, and loose teeth before progressing to weakness, joint pain, and ultimately death. And the only cure was fresh fruits and vegetables, which were nearly impossible to obtain during long ocean voyages. Pirates who understood the connection between fresh produce and scurvy would go to extraordinary lengths to obtain citrus fruits, onions, and other vegetables whenever they made port, often trading valuable plunder for seemingly worthless bags of limes or sauerkraut that could mean the difference between life and death for their crews. The preparation and preservation of vegetables aboard pirate ships required considerable skill and knowledge, as fresh produce would spoil within days in the hot, humid conditions below deck, leading to the development of techniques like pickling, fermentation, and drying that could extend the life of vegetables for weeks or even months. Sauerkraut became particularly popular among pirates who understood its anti-scurvy properties, and the process of making this fermented cabbage became a closely guarded skill among ship's cooks, who would carefully tend to barrels of fermenting cabbage like they were caring for newborn babies, because a successful batch of sauerkraut could literally save the entire crew from a horrible, lingering death. The psychology of eating disgusting food day after day, month after month, had profound effects on pirate crews, creating a culture where normal standards of hygiene and palatability simply didn't exist and new crew members who showed squeamishness about eating rotten meat or bug-infested biscuits were often mocked and ostracized until they adapted to the ship's food culture or died from malnutrition. Many pirates developed a kind of culinary Stockholm syndrome, actually developing preferences for foods that would horrify normal people, like maggoty cheese, weevily biscuits, or meat that was so rotten it had turned completely green. Because these foods represented survival and camaraderie in a world where both were in short supply. The social dynamics around food sharing created complex hierarchies and alliances within pirate crews, as crew members who were generous with their rations during hard times would earn loyalty and respect, while those who hoarded food or stole from others would quickly find themselves isolated and vulnerable to violence from their hungry shipmates. Food-related violence was common aboard pirate ships, with fights breaking out over everything from the size of rations to accusations of stealing food. And these conflicts could quickly escalate into knife fights or even mutinies that would tear crews apart and leave ships drifting helplessly at sea with reduced crews unable to properly sail or defend themselves. The economics of pirate food reveals fascinating insights into how these criminal enterprises actually operated, because despite popular images of pirates hoarding chests of gold and jewels, the reality was that most pirate crews were constantly struggling to obtain the basic necessities of life, including food, water, and medical supplies, and successful raids were often measured not in treasure captured, but in provisions acquired. Pirates would often attack smaller fishing boats and coastal settlements, not for their wealth, but for their food supplies, because a few barrels of fresh water, some bags of grain, or a hold full of fresh fish could be more valuable to a hungry crew than a chest of silver coins that couldn't fill empty stomachs. A relationship between pirates and the merchant sailors they attacked was complicated by food considerations, as pirates would often spare the lives of ship's cooks and other crew members who possessed valuable knowledge about food preparation and preservation, sometimes forcing these specialists to join their crews whether they wanted to or not. Captured cooks became valuable commodities in the pirate world, and experienced ship's cooks who knew how to make edible meals from terrible ingredients could find themselves passed from crew to crew like valuable property, their skills in demand wherever pirates gathered. The seasonal nature of pirating was heavily influenced by food availability, with most pirate activity concentrated during times of year when fresh provisions were more readily available and when weather conditions made long voyages more survivable, while winter months often saw pirate crews holed up in remote harbors, slowly consuming their stored provisions and hoping to survive until spring. The geographic patterns of pirate activity were also shaped by food considerations, with certain regions becoming popular pirate haunts, not because of their strategic value, but because they offered reliable sources of fresh water, fruits, vegetables, and other provisions that could keep crews healthy during long voyages. The Caribbean became a pirate paradise partly because of its abundant tropical fruits, coconuts, and fish, which provided the fresh nutrients necessary to prevent scurvy and other nutritional diseases, while also offering numerous secluded coves and islands where crews could beach their ships, careen their hulls, and process large quantities of food for storage. Coconuts were particularly valuable to Caribbean pirates because they provided both food and drink, with the meat offering substantial nutrition and the milk providing a source of relatively clean liquid that could supplement contaminated water. Supplies and pirates developed numerous techniques for efficiently harvesting and processing coconuts in large quantities. The art of fishing from pirate ships became an essential survival skill, with crews deploying nets, lines, and traps whenever weather and circumstances permitted, and successful fishing expeditions could provide not only immediate fresh food, but also fish that could be salted, dried, or smoked for future consumption. Sea turtles were considered the ultimate prize by many pirate crews because these large reptiles could provide enormous quantities of fresh meat, and the practice of flipping sea turtles onto their backs to keep them alive and fresh until they could be butchered became a standard technique among experienced pirates. The preparation of sea turtle meat required considerable skill and knowledge, as different parts of the turtle were best suited for different cooking methods, and experienced cooks could turn a single large turtle into dozens of meals, using every part of the animal from the meat to the eggs to the blood, with nothing wasted in an environment where every calorie was precious. Bird eggs became another crucial source of fresh nutrition for pirates operating in coastal areas, and crews would often risk dangerous climbs up rocky cliffs and into bird colonies to harvest eggs from seabirds, which provided not only protein, but also fat and other nutrients that were often lacking in the typical pirate diet. The seasonal migration patterns of various fish and bird species became vital knowledge for pirate crews, who would time their movements to take advantage of these natural phenomena, following schools of fish or arriving at nesting sites, just as birds were laying their eggs. Seaweed and other marine plants were sometimes harvested by desperate crews, though the nutritional value of these foods was limited and they often caused digestive problems. But in situations where scurvy was threatening the crew, even marginally nutritious plant matter could provide life-saving vitamins and minerals. The trading relationships that pirates maintained with certain coastal communities were often based primarily on food exchange rather than traditional pirate raids, with some settlements providing fresh provisions to pirate crews in exchange for protection or shares of plundered goods, creating complex economic relationships that blurred the line between piracy and legitimate commerce. These symbiotic relationships between pirates and coastal communities reveal how the economics of survival often trumped legal and moral considerations, with supposedly law-abiding citizens willing to provide aid to pirates in exchange for food, protection, or economic opportunities that weren't available through legitimate channels. The role of alcohol in pirate nutrition goes far beyond the popular image of rum-swilling buccaneers, because alcoholic beverages served several practical purposes aboard ship, including providing calories and nutrients, killing bacteria in contaminated water, and serving as a form of currency that could be traded for other necessities. Rum became the preferred alcoholic beverage among Caribbean pirates, not just because it was readily available from sugar plantations, but because it had a higher alcohol content than beer or wine, making it more effective at killing harmful bacteria and making contaminated water safer to drink. The process of rationing alcohol aboard pirate ships was carefully controlled, with daily rum rations serving not just as a morale booster, but as an essential part of the crew's nutritional intake, providing carbohydrates and calories that helped sustain pirates during periods when food was scarce. Beer was actually preferred over rum by many pirates when it was available, because beer provided more nutrition per volume and was less likely to cause the kind of severe intoxication that could be dangerous during storms or battles. But beer spoiled much more quickly than rum in tropical climates, making it impractical for long voyages. The brewing of alcoholic beverages aboard ship became a valuable skill, with some pirates learning to ferment whatever fruits, grains, or other fermentable materials they could find, creating crude but effective alcoholic drinks that provided both nutrition and psychological comfort during difficult times. Wine captured from merchant ships was highly prized, not just for its alcohol content, but for its perceived medicinal properties, with many pirates believing that wine could prevent or cure various diseases, though the reality was that wine provided little nutritional benefit beyond its caloric content. The social rituals surrounding alcohol consumption aboard pirate ships served important psychological functions, creating moments of shared experience and camaraderie that helped bind crews together despite the harsh conditions and constant dangers they faced. And these drinking sessions often became opportunities for planning raids, resolving disputes, or simply maintaining the human connections that made survival bearable. The medicinal use of alcohol was widespread among pirate crews, who used various alcoholic beverages to clean wounds, numb pain during crude surgical procedures, and treat various ailments ranging from scurvy to dysentery, though the effectiveness of these treatments was questionable at best. The economics of alcohol acquisition shaped many pirate operations, with crews specifically targeting ships carrying wine, rum, or other alcoholic beverages, and successful alcohol raids could boost crew morale and trading power far out of proportion to the actual monetary value of the captured drinks. The preservation of alcoholic beverages aboard ship required careful storage and handling, as exposure to heat, light, and salt air could quickly spoil even high-quality wines and spirits, leading to the development of specialized storage techniques that maximize the shelf life of these precious liquids. The relationship between alcohol consumption and food safety was crucial aboard pirate ships, where drinking alcohol with meals could help kill harmful bacteria in contaminated food and reduce the risk of food poisoning, though this practice also led to chronic alcoholism among many crew members. The cultural significance of toasting and drinking rituals among pirates served to reinforce group identity and solidarity, with elaborate ceremonies surrounding the sharing of captured alcohol that helped maintain crew cohesion during long, difficult voyages. The production of distilled spirits aboard ship was occasionally attempted by pirates with the necessary knowledge and equipment, using captured sugar, molasses, or fruit to create crude rum or other spirits, though this process was dangerous and often unsuccessful due to the primitive conditions and lack of proper equipment. The trading value of alcohol in pirate ports and among coastal communities made alcoholic beverages a form of currency that could be exchanged for food, weapons, information, or other necessities, creating complex economic networks that extended far beyond simple piracy. The seasonal availability of different types of alcohol influenced pirate operations, with certain times of year offering better opportunities to capture ships carrying fresh wine harvests or newly distilled spirits, while other seasons might force crews to rely on their stored alcohol supplies. The adulteration of alcoholic beverages was common among unscrupulous traders who dealt with pirates, leading to the development of techniques for testing the quality and purity of alcohol before trading valuable food or other supplies for potentially worthless diluted spirits. The role of the ship's quartermaster in managing alcohol distribution was crucial to maintaining discipline and morale, as unfair or irregular alcohol rations could quickly lead to mutiny, while generous distribution during successful raids could reinforce the captain's authority and crew loyalty. The medical consequences of chronic alcohol consumption on pirate crews were severe, with many pirates suffering from liver disease, malnutrition exacerbated by alcohol, and various other health problems that shortened their already dangerous lives, though few alternatives existed for dealing with the psychological stress of their lifestyle. The preparation of alcoholic punches and mixed drinks aboard ship became an art form among pirates, who would combine whatever alcoholic beverages they had available with fruit juices, spices, and other ingredients to create more palatable drinks that provided both nutrition and intoxication. The use of alcohol as a preservative for other foods was occasionally practiced by knowledgeable pirates, who would store fruits, meats, or other perishables in strong spirits to extend their shelf life, though this technique required considerable expertise to execute successfully. The psychological effects of alcohol withdrawal were a serious concern for pirate crews who found themselves without access to alcoholic beverages for extended periods, as withdrawal symptoms could incapacitate crew members and reduce the ship's ability to function effectively during critical situations. The ceremonial aspects of alcohol consumption during pirate celebrations, funerals, and other significant events helped maintain cultural traditions and group identity among crews that were otherwise isolated from normal society for months or years at a time. The regional variations in alcoholic beverages preferred by different pirate crews reflected their geographic origins and the trading routes they frequented, with Caribbean pirates favoring rum, Mediterranean pirates preferring wine, and Northerners, European pirates seeking beer and distilled grain spirits. The quality control of alcoholic beverages was a matter of life and death for pirate crews, as contaminated or poisoned alcohol could kill or incapacitate entire crews, leading to the development of testing procedures and the designation of official tasters who would sample alcohol before it was distributed to the crew. The strategic importance of controlling sources of alcohol led some pirate crews to establish permanent bases near distilleries, breweries, or wine-producing regions, creating semi-permanent settlements that blurred the line between piracy and legitimate colonial enterprise. The seasonal brewing and distilling cycles in various regions influenced pirate raid patterns, with experienced captains timing their attacks to coincide with harvest seasons and production periods when the highest quality and largest quantities of alcoholic beverages would be available. The medicinal preparation of alcoholic tinctures and remedies was practiced by some pirates who possessed knowledge of herbal medicine, combining alcohol with various plants and substances to create treatments for common ailments ranging from digestive problems to infected wounds. The social hierarchy surrounding alcohol access reflected broader power structures aboard pirate ships, with officers and favored crew members sometimes receiving better quality or larger quantities of alcoholic beverages, while common sailors had to content themselves with whatever remained. The long-term storage of alcohol in tropical climates presented unique challenges, as heat and humidity could accelerate spoilage and evaporation, leading to the development of specialized storage techniques that maximized the preservation of these valuable liquids over long voyages. The cultural exchange of drinking customs between pirates of different nationalities created unique traditions and rituals that reflected the international nature of many pirate crews, with Spanish, English, French, and Dutch drinking customs blending together in fascinating ways. The economic impact of pirate alcohol consumption on legitimate trade was significant, as pirates represented a substantial black market demand for alcoholic beverages that diverted products away from legal channels and into criminal networks that spanned the Atlantic world. The technological innovations in alcohol storage and preservation developed by pirates often found their way into legitimate maritime commerce, as merchants and naval officers adopted successful techniques for maintaining alcohol quality during long voyages. The religious and cultural attitudes toward alcohol consumption varied widely among pirate crews, with some groups maintaining strict religious prohibitions against drinking, while others embraced alcohol as an essential part of their social and cultural identity. The environmental factors affecting alcohol storage aboard ship included not only temperature and humidity, but also the constant motion of the vessel, which could cause settling, mixing, and other changes in stored alcoholic beverages that affected their taste and potency. The relationship between alcohol consumption and violence aboard pirate ships was complex, as drinking could both reduce tensions through social bonding and increase conflicts through lowered inhibitions and impaired judgment, requiring careful management by officers to maintain discipline. The seasonal depression and psychological stress experienced by pirate crews during long voyages were often treated with alcohol, though this self-medication frequently created more problems than it solved, leading to cycles of dependence and withdrawal that weakened crew effectiveness. The trading networks that supplied alcohol to pirate crews extended throughout the Atlantic world, involving corrupt merchants, colonial officials, and even naval officers who were willing to risk their careers and reputations for the profits available in the pirate alcohol trade. The technical knowledge required to properly store, serve, and maintain alcoholic beverages aboard ship was considerable, encompassing everything from cooperage and barrel maintenance to understanding the chemical processes that affected alcohol quality over time. The ceremonial weapons and drinking vessels used in pirate alcohol rituals often became treasured possessions that were passed down through generations of pirates, carrying cultural and symbolic significance that went far beyond their practical utility. The health benefits claimed for various alcoholic beverages by pirate crews ranged from the plausible to the absurd, with different drinks credited with everything from preventing scurvy to curing impotence, though most of these beliefs had little basis in medical reality. The geographic knowledge accumulated by pirates in their search for high-quality alcoholic beverages contributed to broader understanding of global trade routes, production centers, and seasonal patterns that benefited legitimate commerce as well as criminal enterprises. The social networks created through alcohol trading relationships often provided pirates with valuable intelligence about merchant ship movements, naval patrols, and other information that was crucial to the success of their operations. The cultural legacy of pirate drinking customs influenced the development of tavern culture, drinking games, and social rituals in many colonial communities, particularly in port cities where pirates frequently came ashore to spend their plunder. The environmental impact of pirate alcohol consumption included not only the direct effects of raids on production facilities, but also the ecological damage caused by the disposal of containers, the pollution of water sources, and the disruption of local ecosystems. The technological transfer between pirates and legitimate alcohol producers occasionally worked in both directions, with pirates introducing new production techniques, storage methods, or distribution strategies that they had learned from captured specialists or through their own experimentation. The linguistic influence of pirate alcohol culture can still be seen in maritime terminology, drinking expressions, and cultural references that have persisted long after the golden age of piracy ended, reflecting the deep cultural impact of these maritime criminals. The psychological profile of pirates who specialized in alcohol-related activities reveals interesting patterns of behavior, motivation, and social organization that differed significantly from pirates who focused primarily on treasure, slaves, or other forms of plunder. The economic calculations involved in alcohol-focused piracy were complex, requiring knowledge of production costs, market values, transportation expenses, and storage requirements that went far beyond simple smash and grab. Robbery tactics. The legal implications of alcohol piracy were often more severe than other forms of maritime crime, as governments viewed the disruption of alcohol trade as particularly threatening to tax revenues and social control, leading to harsher punishments for pirates caught with stolen alcohol. The technological innovations required to successfully transport and store large quantities of stolen alcohol led to advances in ship design, cargo handling, and preservation techniques that had applications far beyond the pirate world. The social mobility available to pirates who demonstrated expertise in alcohol-related activities was considerable, with successful alcohol specialists often rising to positions of authority and respect within pirate crews, regardless of their social origins or educational background. The international dimensions of pirate alcohol trade created diplomatic complications between European powers, as stolen alcohol often crossed multiple jurisdictional boundaries and involved the citizens and territories of several different nations. The seasonal patterns of alcohol availability shaped not only pirate operations, but also the broader rhythms of colonial life. As communities prepared for and responded to the periodic arrival of pirate crews seeking to trade or steal alcoholic beverages, the cultural assimilation between pirates and the communities that supplied them with alcohol created hybrid societies with unique customs, languages, and social structures that reflected the blending of criminal and legitimate cultures. The long-term economic effects of pirate alcohol activities included changes in production patterns, trade routes, and market structures that persisted long after individual pirate crews had been destroyed or disbanded by authorities. The technological legacy of pirate alcohol storage and preservation techniques can be traced through the development of commercial shipping, naval logistics, and even modern food and beverage industry practices that have their roots in innovations developed by these maritime criminals. Now, as we drift deeper into this fascinating world of pirate sustenance, let me paint you an even more vivid picture of what daily life was really like for these seafaring outcasts, because the reality of pirate nutrition extended far beyond the basic struggle for calories and into the realm of psychological survival, cultural identity, and the fundamental human need to maintain dignity and hope even in the most desperate circumstances. The breakfast routines aboard pirate ships were nothing like the hearty morning meals you might imagine, instead consisting of whatever cold leftovers remained from the previous night's dinner, often nothing more than a chunk of hardtack biscuit, soaked in rum-diluted water, and perhaps a strip of leathery salt pork that had been chewed to soften it enough to swallow without breaking teeth. The morning ritual of tapping hardtack biscuits to remove weevils became so ingrained in pirate culture that the sound of dozens of men simultaneously tapping their breakfast against wooden surfaces created a distinctive rhythm that experienced pirates could hear from great distances, serving as an unofficial signal that a pirate ship was nearby. The psychological impact of starting each day with food that most people would consider inedible created a mindset of resignation and desperation that permeated every aspect of pirate life, yet paradoxically also fostered a kind of grim camaraderie, as crew members shared in this daily ritual of survival through disgust. The lunch meal, when it existed at all, was typically the most substantial food of the day, consisting of the main cooking pot's contents distributed among the crew, and this meal became the social center of pirate life, with crew members gathering around the communal pot to share not only food, but also news, gossip, complaints, and plans for future raids. The evening meal was often the most creative, as ship's cooks would have had the entire day to prepare whatever ingredients were available, but creativity in the pirate culinary world meant finding new ways to disguise the taste and texture of rotten, infested, or otherwise inedible ingredients rather than creating genuinely appetizing dishes. The Sunday meal tradition aboard many pirate ships attempted to recreate some semblance of civilized dining, with crews making special efforts to clean themselves, share better food if available, and observe some of the social customs they remembered from their lives before piracy, though these efforts often highlighted the vast gulf between their current reality and their former lives. The midnight watch meal was a lonely affair for the pirates assigned to night duty, typically consisting of cold scraps eaten alone on deck while trying to stay alert for other ships, enemy attacks, or dangerous weather. And the psychological isolation of eating terrible food alone in the darkness was one of the most demoralizing aspects of pirate life. The celebration meals following successful raids were legendary among pirate crews, with captured food and drink being consumed in massive feasts that could last for days, though these celebrations often ended with crews too drunk and sick to properly sail their ships, leaving them vulnerable to attack or shipwreck. The funeral meals held for dead crew members were somber affairs where the deceased's food rations would be distributed among the survivors, creating a grim reminder of mortality while also providing desperately needed additional nutrition for the living crew members. The punishment meals served to pirates who had violated ship's rules or displeased their officers were deliberately worse than the already terrible standard fare, often consisting of nothing but water and hardtack for days or weeks. And the psychological torture of watching other crew members eat marginally better food while you starved was an effective disciplinary tool. The sick bay meals prepared for injured or diseased crew members represented the closest thing to medical care available aboard most pirate ships, with cooks attempting to prepare more digestible foods like thin gruel or broth for pirates who were too weak or sick to handle the standard fare, though the nutritional value of these invalid meals was often insufficient to promote actual recovery. The trading post meals eaten during brief shore leaves were often the only truly appetizing food that pirates would taste for months at a time, and the psychological impact of eating fresh bread, ripe fruit, or properly cooked meat was so profound that many pirates would spend every coin they had on food rather than saving money for other necessities. The seasonal variation in pirate meals was dramatic, with summer months offering more opportunities for fresh fish, tropical fruits, and vegetables, while winter voyages often meant months of nothing but preserved foods that grew progressively, more rotten and inedible as time passed. The geographic variation in pirate cuisine reflected the different regions where crews operated, with Caribbean pirates enjoying access to tropical fruits and spices, while Northern Atlantic pirates relied more heavily on preserved meats and root vegetables that could survive in colder climates. The cultural fusion that occurred when pirates of different nationalities shared meals created unique culinary traditions that blended cooking techniques, ingredients, and flavors from across Europe, Africa, and the Americas, resulting in dishes that existed nowhere else in the world. The religious observances around meals varied widely among pirate crews, with some maintaining Christian blessing traditions while others adopted superstitious rituals designed to ward off bad luck or ensure successful raids, and these mealtime ceremonies helped maintain group identity and cultural continuity. The gender dynamics around food preparation and distribution were complex aboard the rare pirate ships that included women, as female crew members often found themselves assigned cooking duties regardless of their other skills, though some women used their control over food distribution to gain power and influence within the crew hierarchy. The age-related meal privileges aboard pirate ships typically favored older, more experienced crew members who received first choice of whatever food was available, while younger pirates and new recruits were forced to accept whatever scraps remained, creating a hierarchy of hunger that reinforced the ship's power structure and encouraged loyalty to senior crew members. The medical knowledge surrounding food and nutrition was primitive among most pirate crews, though some ships were fortunate enough to have former military surgeons or ship's doctors who understood the connection between diet and health. And these medical practitioners would sometimes override the captain's authority when it came to food distribution during outbreaks of scurvy or other nutritional diseases. The preservation techniques used by pirates went far beyond simple salting and smoking, including methods like burying food in sand, wrapping meat in seaweed, storing vegetables in rum barrels, and even using captured enemy sailors' clothing as food wrapping, demonstrating the desperate creativity that hunger and necessity could inspire. The seasonal hunting opportunities available to pirates operating near coastlines included everything from seabirds and their eggs to seals, dolphins, and even whales when circumstances permitted, though the dangerous and labor-intensive nature of hunting large sea mammals meant that such activities were only undertaken when crews were truly desperate for food. The food-related diseases that plagued pirate crews were numerous and devastating, ranging from scurvy and dysentery to food poisoning and malnutrition-related infections. And the lack of proper medical care meant that dietary illnesses often proved fatal even when they might have been easily treatable on land. The psychological coping mechanisms that pirates developed to deal with eating disgusting food included elaborate mental games, storytelling during meals to distract from the taste and texture of their food, and the creation of fictional narratives about what they were actually eating rather than acknowledging the revolting reality. The economic calculations involved in pirate food procurement were surprisingly sophisticated, with experienced captains and quartermasters developing complex formulas for determining whether it was more profitable to attack a food-carrying vessel, trade for provisions at a friendly port, or attempt to hunt and gather food from uninhabited islands. The technological innovations in food storage developed by pirates included improvements to barrel design, new methods for organizing ships' holds to maximize storage capacity while minimizing spoilage, and creative solutions for protecting food. Stores from rats, insects, and other pests that could quickly destroy a crew's entire food supply. The social rituals surrounding the sharing of rare treats like captured chocolate, coffee, or sugar became elaborate ceremonies that reinforced crew bonds and provided psychological relief from the monotony and desperation of typical pirate meals, with these precious commodities often being rationed one tiny portion at a time to extend the pleasure for as long as possible. The linguistic evolution of pirate food terminology created a unique vocabulary that reflected their desperate circumstances, with euphemistic terms for rotten meat, infested biscuits, and contaminated water that allowed crew members to discuss their terrible food situation without completely demoralizing themselves or newcomers to the crew. The environmental adaptation required for pirate survival included learning to identify edible plants, fruits, and other food sources on unfamiliar tropical islands, distinguishing between safe and poisonous species, and understanding the seasonal availability of different natural food sources in various geographic regions. The cultural exchange that occurred when pirate crews interacted with indigenous populations often centered around food, with pirates learning native hunting, fishing, and food preparation techniques, while sometimes teaching local people European cooking methods and food preservation strategies, creating hybrid culinary traditions in many remote coastal areas. The quality control measures developed by experienced pirates for evaluating captured food included visual inspection techniques for identifying spoiled provisions, smell tests for detecting contamination, and tasting procedures that could reveal adulteration or poisoning without exposing the entire crew to danger. The logistical challenges of feeding large pirate crews during extended voyages required careful planning and resource management, with successful captains needing to balance the caloric needs of their crews against the storage capacity of their ships and the unpredictable availability of food sources along their intended routes. The seasonal migration patterns of fish, birds, and other marine life became crucial knowledge for pirate crews, who would plan their voyages to coincide with these natural phenomena and maximize their opportunities for obtaining fresh food through fishing and hunting rather than relying entirely on captured or purchased provisions. The medicinal properties attributed to various foods by pirate crews reflected a mixture of folk wisdom, superstition, and practical experience, with certain foods believed to cure specific ailments, prevent diseases, or enhance physical strength and endurance, though many of these beliefs had little basis in actual nutritional science. The preparation rituals surrounding special meals during pirate celebrations, victories, or holidays often involved elaborate cooking procedures that transformed ordinary ingredients into symbolic dishes that reinforced crew identity and cultural traditions, even when the underlying food quality remained poor. The water procurement strategies employed by pirates included not only capturing fresh water supplies from other ships, but also developing techniques for collecting rainwater, finding fresh springs on islands, and even attempting primitive desalination, methods using captured equipment or improvised distillation apparatus. The storage hierarchy aboard pirate ships placed the most valuable and longest-lasting food items in the most secure and accessible locations, while less important or more perishable provisions were stored in areas that might be sacrificed if the ship needed to lighten its load during storms or battles. The crew rotation systems for food preparation duties ensured that the burden of cooking terrible meals was shared among crew members, though some pirates with natural culinary talent or previous cooking experience would often volunteer for permanence, kitchen duty in exchange for certain privileges or exemptions from other shipboard tasks. The trading relationships between pirates and corrupt merchants in various ports often centered around food transactions, with unscrupulous businessmen willing to sell spoiled, adulterated, or stolen provisions to pirate crews at inflated prices, creating a black market economy that thrived on desperation and lawlessness. The seasonal availability of different types of captured vessels meant that pirate food supplies would vary dramatically depending on the time of year, with certain seasons offering better opportunities to capture ships carrying fresh provisions, while other times of year might yield only vessels loaded with manufactured goods that couldn't feed hungry crews. The psychological impact of food scarcity on pirate crew dynamics was profound, with hunger making pirates more irritable, violent, and prone to mutiny, while successful food procurement could improve morale and crew loyalty far more effectively than captured treasure or other forms of plunder. The regional specialization among different pirate crews often reflected their preferred food sources and procurement strategies, with some groups focusing on fishing and marine hunting, while others specialized in raiding agricultural settlements or capturing merchant vessels carrying specific types of provisions. The technological transfer between pirates and legitimate maritime commerce occasionally involved innovations in food preservation and storage that were developed by desperate pirate crews and later adopted by merchant sailors, naval officers, and colonial settlers who recognized their practical value. The cultural memory of pre-piracy meals served as a powerful psychological anchor for many crew members who would spend hours describing and fantasizing about the foods they had enjoyed in their former lives, creating elaborate mental feasts that provided temporary escape from their current nutritional reality. The economic impact of pirate food procurement on colonial communities was significant, as pirate raids on agricultural settlements, fishing fleets, and food transport vessels could disrupt local food supplies and drive up prices for ordinary citizens who had no connection to piracy. The seasonal depression experienced by pirate crews during periods of particularly poor food availability was often compounded by the physical effects of malnutrition, creating cycles of despair and desperation that could lead to mutiny, desertion, or even suicide among crew members who could no longer endure their circumstances. The religious and spiritual practices surrounding food among pirate crews varied widely, with some groups maintaining traditional blessing ceremonies, while others developed entirely new superstitions and rituals designed to ensure food safety, successful hunting, or divine protection from starvation. The medical improvisation required when treating food-related illnesses aboard pirate ships led to the development of crude but sometimes effective remedies using whatever materials were available, including the use of rum as an antiseptic, hardtack as a poultice for wounds, and various captured herbs and spices as medicines. The social stratification within pirate crews was often most visible during meal times, when differences in food quality, portion size, and eating privileges would clearly demonstrate each crew member's status within the ship's hierarchy, creating daily reminders of power relationships and social position. The environmental challenges of food storage in tropical climates required constant vigilance against heat, humidity, insects, and rot, with crews developing elaborate systems for monitoring food quality and rotating supplies to minimize waste and maximize the useful life of their provisions. The cultural assimilation between captured crew members who were forced to join pirate crews often began with shared meals, as the experience of eating terrible food together created bonds of mutual suffering that could overcome initial hostility and resistance to joining the pirate lifestyle. The seasonal weather patterns that affected pirate operations were closely tied to food availability, as storms could disrupt fishing and hunting activities while also making it dangerous to approach shores where fresh provisions might be obtained from settlements or natural sources. The technological innovation in cooking equipment aboard pirate ships was driven by necessity and resourcefulness, with crews improvising cooking utensils, storage containers, and food preparation tools from whatever materials they could capture, steal, or fashion from ship components. The long-term health effects of the pirate diet were devastating, with most pirates suffering from malnutrition-related diseases, dental problems from eating hard and contaminated food, digestive issues from consuming spoiled provisions, and various other health problems that significantly shortened their life expectancy. The psychological adaptation required to survive on pirate food included developing tolerance for disgusting tastes and textures, learning to ignore visual signs of spoilage and contamination, and cultivating mental strategies for dissociating from the physical act of eating to avoid overwhelming nausea and revulsion. The economic opportunities created by pirate food procurement included not only direct theft and robbery, but also legitimate trading relationships with colonial settlements that were willing to exchange food for protection, information, or shares of captured treasure. The cultural exchange between different ethnic groups within pirate crews was often most evident during meal preparation and consumption, as crew members from various backgrounds would contribute their traditional cooking techniques, seasoning, preferences, and food preparation knowledge to create unique fusion cuisines. The environmental knowledge accumulated by pirates in their search for food sources contributed to broader understanding of marine ecosystems, seasonal patterns, and geographic relationships that sometimes proved valuable to legitimate scientific and commercial enterprises. The social mobility available within pirate crews was sometimes tied to food-related skills, with crew members who demonstrated ability in hunting, fishing, cooking, or food preservation potentially advancing in rank and status regardless of their social background or previous experience. The psychological warfare tactics employed by some pirate crews included the strategic use of food and starvation to break the will of captured enemies, besieged settlements, or rebellious crew members, demonstrating how control over food supplies could be weaponized for political and military purposes. The seasonal celebration traditions maintained by some pirate crews attempted to recreate the holiday feasts and special meals they remembered from their former lives, though these celebrations were often pathetic approximations of genuine festivities due to the poor quality and limited variety of available ingredients. The medical knowledge passed down through generations of pirates included practical wisdom about which foods could prevent or treat various diseases, how to identify and avoid poisonous plants and animals, and what combinations of available ingredients could provide the most nutritional benefit for hungry crews. The technological adaptation required for successful pirate food procurement included modifications to ships for improved storage capacity, development of specialized tools for hunting and fishing, and creation of portable equipment for processing and preserving food obtained during raids or foraging expeditions. The cultural legacy of pirate cuisine can still be traced in the cooking traditions of various Caribbean and Atlantic coastal communities, where recipes, preparation techniques, and food customs developed by pirate crews have been passed down through generations and integrated into local culinary cultures. The economic calculations involved in balancing food costs against other expedition expenses required sophisticated understanding of markets, seasonal price variations, and the relative value of different types of provisions, skills that successful pirate captains often learned through expensive trial and error. The psychological impact of food abundance following successful raids was often as disruptive as food scarcity, with crews gorging themselves to the point of illness and waste, creating boom and bust cycles that could be almost as dangerous as steady starvation in terms of crew health and operational effectiveness. The environmental adaptation strategies developed by pirate crews for surviving in different climatic zones included learning to identify local food sources, understanding seasonal availability patterns, and developing preservation techniques suited to specific environmental conditions ranging from tropical heat to Arctic cold. The social bonding that occurred through shared food experiences created the interpersonal relationships that held pirate crews together, despite the constant dangers and hardships they faced, with mealtimes often serving as the primary opportunity for crew members to interact on a personal level rather than simply as working partners. The technological innovation in food preservation techniques developed by pirates often involved creative applications of available materials and resources, such as using captured canvas for wrapping foods, employing ship tar as a preservative, coating or utilizing enemy weapons as cooking implements in desperate situations. The cultural preservation efforts among pirate crews sometimes focused on maintaining food traditions from their homelands, with crew members teaching each other recipes, cooking techniques, and meal customs that helped preserve cultural identity, despite their criminal lifestyle and international composition. The medical understanding of nutrition among educated pirates occasionally led to more systematic approaches to crew feeding, with some ships implementing rationing systems, dietary diversity requirements, and health monitoring procedures that were surprisingly advanced for their time and circumstances. The psychological coping strategies developed by pirates for dealing with chronic hunger and poor food quality included mental exercises, group activities during meals, storytelling traditions, and various forms of entertainment that could distract from the physical discomfort of eating terrible food day after day. The economic relationships between pirates and food suppliers in various ports created complex networks of corruption and illegal commerce that extended far beyond simple piracy, involving colonial officials, merchant families, and even religious institutions that were willing to profit from the pirate food trade. The seasonal migration patterns of pirate crews were often determined by food availability rather than weather or military considerations, with experienced captains planning their routes to coincide with fishing seasons, harvest times, and the scheduled movements of food-carrying merchant vessels. The technological development of improved food storage and preservation methods aboard pirate ships contributed to advances in maritime technology that benefited legitimate shipping, naval operations, and colonial development throughout the Atlantic world. The cultural fusion that occurred when pirates from different backgrounds shared cooking duties and food preparation responsibilities created unique hybrid cuisines that reflected the international character of many pirate crews and the desperate creativity that hunger could inspire. The environmental impact of pirate food procurement activities extended beyond direct theft and hunting to include disruption of local ecosystems, overfishing of coastal waters, and introduction of non-native species to remote islands where pirates established temporary bases or permanent settlements. The social hierarchy surrounding food distribution and meal privileges aboard pirate ships reflected broader patterns of authority and respect within these criminal organizations, with food access serving as both a reward for loyalty and a punishment for insubordination. The psychological transformation that occurred as pirates adapted to their terrible diet often included fundamental changes in their relationship with food, pleasure, and basic human needs, with many former pirates finding it difficult to readjust to normal eating patterns if they eventually returned to legitimate society. The medicinal applications of various foods and beverages in pirate healthcare ranged from legitimate nutritional therapy to superstitious folk remedies, with crew members developing complex beliefs about the healing properties of different ingredients, based on personal experience, cultural tradition, and desperate hope. The technological improvisation required for cooking and food preparation aboard pirate ships led to innovations in portable cooking equipment, improvised utensils, and creative applications of ship components for culinary purposes that demonstrated the remarkable adaptability of humans facing desperate circumstances. The cultural documentation of pirate food experiences through songs, stories, and oral traditions has preserved valuable historical information about maritime life, colonial food systems, and the social dynamics of these criminal organizations that might otherwise have been lost to history. The economic impact of pirate food activities on global trade patterns was significant enough to influence shipping routes, cargo composition, and insurance practices throughout the Atlantic world, demonstrating how criminal activity could reshape legitimate commerce in unexpected ways. And as we near the end of this incredible journey through the dark and fascinating world of pirate cuisine, I want you to take a moment to really absorb just how different life was for these desperate souls who turned to piracy not just for adventure or treasure, but often simply to survive in a world where hunger was a constant companion and every meal was a victory, snatched from the jaws of starvation. Because the next time you sit down to enjoy a fresh, hot meal prepared with ingredients you can trust, you'll remember the stories of these seafaring criminals who would have considered your simplest breakfast an unimaginable feast fit for kings. And perhaps you'll gain a new appreciation for the abundance and food safety that we take for granted in our modern world, while also understanding that beneath the romantic myths and Hollywood glamour, piracy was fundamentally about survival, desperation, and the lengths that human beings will go to when faced with the choice between crime and starvation. A choice that shaped not only individual lives, but entire economic systems, cultural traditions, and historical patterns that continue to influence our world today. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that you've just experienced one of the most comprehensive explorations of pirate food culture ever assembled. A journey that has taken us from the maggot-infested hardtack biscuits of Caribbean buccaneers to the sophisticated preservation techniques developed by Atlantic pirates, from the desperate cannibalism of crews facing starvation to the elaborate feast celebrations following successful raids, and from the simple struggle for basic calories to the complex cultural and economic systems that emerged around pirate food procurement. And I hope that this deep dive into the culinary world of maritime criminals has not only entertained you during these late hours, but also given you a new perspective on both historical piracy and the fundamental human relationship with food, survival, and the lengths we'll go to preserve our lives and the lives of those we care about. Because ultimately, the story of what pirates ate and drank is really the story of human resilience, creativity, and the unbreakable will to survive, even in the most impossible circumstances. A story that continues to resonate today as we face our own challenges and remember that every meal is a gift, every clean glass of water is a blessing, and every moment of food security is something that our pirate ancestors could only dream of as they sailed the endless oceans in search of their next meager meal. So sleep well knowing that you've learned something truly extraordinary tonight, and sweet dreams of better food than any pirate ever tasted. But before we close this incredible journey, let me take you even deeper into some of the most shocking and fascinating aspects of pirate food culture that reveal just how desperate and creative these maritime criminals could become when faced with the ultimate challenge of survival on the open ocean. The winter survival strategies employed by pirate crews operating in northern waters required completely different approaches to food procurement and preservation, as the cold temperatures that could preserve food also made hunting and fishing exponentially more dangerous, with crews risking frostbite, hypothermia, and death just to catch a single fish or bird that might keep them alive for another day. The ice preservation techniques discovered by pirates operating in Arctic waters represented some of the earliest experiments in refrigeration, with crews learning to pack fresh meat and fish in natural ice formations to extend their storage life, though the challenge of maintaining ice supplies aboard wooden ships in varying climates made this preservation method unreliable at best. The psychological impact of seasonal affective disorder on pirate crews during long winter voyages was compounded by poor nutrition and vitamin deficiencies, creating cycles of depression, violence, and despair that could tear apart Even the most cohesive crews, with some ships reporting complete mental breakdowns among crew members who simply couldn't endure another day of terrible food in endless darkness. The Arctic hunting expeditions undertaken by desperate pirate crews included attempts to hunt seals, walruses, and even polar bears, though these dangerous activities often resulted in more deaths than successful kills. And the specialized knowledge required to properly process and preserve Arctic game meat was possessed by only a few experienced hunters among pirate crews. The cultural adaptation required when pirate crews encountered indigenous Arctic populations often centered around food exchange and survival knowledge with native peoples, sometimes teaching pirates essential hunting and food preservation techniques in exchange for manufactured goods, weapons, or protection from other threats. The seasonal starvation cycles experienced by pirate crews operating in regions with extreme seasonal variation could last for months, with entire crews slowly wasting away as they consumed their stored provisions while waiting for weather conditions to improve enough to resume hunting, fishing, or raiding activities. The cannibalism protocols developed by some pirate crews as a last resort during extreme starvation situations included elaborate rituals and decision-making processes designed to maintain some semblance of humanity and order even in the most desperate circumstances, though these practices were rare and typically only occurred when all other food sources had been completely exhausted. The food poisoning epidemics that could sweep through pirate crews when contaminated provisions were consumed often killed more pirates than enemy action, storms, or other maritime dangers, with entire ships becoming floating morgues as crew. Members died one by one from consuming spoiled meat, contaminated water, or toxic plants mistakenly gathered during foraging expeditions. The emergency food procurement raids conducted by starving pirate crews often targeted civilian populations rather than military or merchant vessels, with desperate pirates attacking fishing villages, agricultural settlements, and even religious missions in their search for anything edible, creating terror among coastal populations who lived in constant fear of pirate food raids. The survival cannibalism incidents documented among pirate crews reveal the absolute depths of desperation that these maritime criminals could reach, with detailed accounts of crews drawing lots to determine who would be killed and eaten, elaborate butchering procedures designed to maximize the nutritional value of human flesh, and psychological coping mechanisms that allowed survivors to live with the knowledge of what they had done. The food preservation experiments conducted by innovative pirates included attempts to create new methods of smoking, salting, drying, and fermentation using whatever materials and equipment they could capture or improvise, with some crews developing preservation techniques that were actually superior to those used by legitimate maritime operations of the same era. The nutritional deficiency diseases that plagued pirate crews created distinctive patterns of illness and death that experienced pirates learned to recognize and sometimes treat using whatever remedies were available, with scurvy, beriberi, pellagra, and other diet-related conditions becoming so common that they were simply accepted as unavoidable aspects of pirate life. The food-related violence that erupted within pirate crews during periods of extreme scarcity often followed predictable patterns, with newer crew members and those without strong alliances being the first to have their rations reduced or eliminated, creating Darwinian survival dynamics that rewarded ruthlessness and punished weakness or compassion. The seasonal migration strategies employed by experienced pirate crews were often based entirely on food availability rather than weather patterns or enemy activity, with captains planning year-long itineraries that would take their ships to different regions at precisely the times when specific food sources would be most abundant and accessible. The food storage innovations developed by pirates operating in tropical climates included creative solutions for preventing spoilage, insect infestation, and contamination in hot, humid conditions that could turn fresh provisions into rotting masses within days, with successful preservation often meaning the difference between crew survival and complete disaster. The cultural food rituals maintained by pirate crews from different ethnic backgrounds created fascinating fusion traditions that blended European, African, and indigenous American cooking techniques and ingredients, resulting in unique culinary practices that existed nowhere else in the world and reflected the truly international character of many pirate operations. The medical applications of captured spices and herbs in pirate healthcare ranged from legitimate therapeutic uses to superstitious folk remedies, with ship's doctors and experienced crew members developing complex pharmacological knowledge about which plants could treat specific ailments, prevent diseases, or enhance physical performance during demanding maritime activities. The economic calculations involved in food-focused piracy required sophisticated understanding of market values, seasonal price fluctuations, and the relative profitability of different types of food-related criminal activities, with successful pirate enterprises often operating more like complex business organizations than simple criminal gangs. The environmental knowledge accumulated by pirate crews in their constant search for food sources contributed to broader scientific understanding of marine ecosystems, seasonal patterns, and geographic relationships that sometimes proved valuable to legitimate exploration, colonization, and commercial development efforts throughout the Atlantic world. The psychological trauma experienced by former pirates who attempted to return to normal society often included persistent food-related anxieties, compulsive hoarding behaviors, and inability to enjoy regular meals without experiencing flashbacks to their desperate maritime experiences, demonstrating the long-lasting mental health effects of chronic food insecurity. The technological innovations in ship design, motivated by food storage requirements, led to improvements in cargo hold construction, ventilation systems, and storage compartment organization that were later adopted by legitimate merchant vessels and naval ships throughout the maritime world. The seasonal depression and mental health crises experienced by pirate crews during periods of poor food availability were often exacerbated by alcohol abuse, social isolation, and the constant stress of criminal activity, creating complex psychological conditions that were barely understood and completely untreatable, given the medical knowledge of the era. The food safety protocols developed by experienced pirate crews included systematic inspection procedures, testing methods for identifying contaminated provisions, and quarantine practices for isolating potentially dangerous food sources before they could poison entire crews, demonstrating surprisingly sophisticated understanding of foodborne illness prevention. The cultural documentation of pirate food experiences through songs, stories, letters, and journal entries has preserved invaluable historical information about maritime life, colonial food systems, and the daily realities of criminal survival. That provides insights into broader patterns of social and economic development during the age of exploration. The long-term health consequences of the pirate diet extended far beyond immediate nutritional deficiencies to include dental destruction from eating hard and contaminated foods, digestive system damage from consuming spoiled provisions, liver and kidney problems from alcohol abuse, and various infections and diseases that were directly related to poor food quality and preparation. The social stratification within pirate crews was often most clearly visible during food distribution, with complex hierarchies determining who received the best portions, who had access to captured delicacies, and who was forced to subsist on the worst scraps, creating daily reminders of power relationships and social status that could influence crew loyalty and operational effectiveness. The geographic specialization among different pirate groups often reflected their preferred food procurement strategies and the unique nutritional challenges of their operating regions, with Caribbean pirates developing expertise in tropical food sources, while North Atlantic pirates became specialists in cold weather survival and preservation techniques. The economic impact of pirate food activities on legitimate trade networks was substantial enough to influence shipping schedules, cargo composition, insurance rates, and route planning throughout the Atlantic commercial system, demonstrating how criminal food procurement could reshape entire economic structures. The technological transfer between pirate operations and legitimate maritime commerce occasionally involved innovations in food preservation, storage, and preparation that were developed by desperate criminal crews and later adopted by merchant sailors, naval officers, and colonial administrators who recognized their practical value. The cultural assimilation between captured crew members and established pirate communities often began with shared food experiences, as the common struggle to obtain and consume terrible provisions created bonds of mutual suffering that could overcome initial resistance to joining criminal enterprises. The environmental adaptation strategies developed by pirate crews for surviving in unfamiliar climatic zones included learning to identify safe local food sources, understanding seasonal availability patterns, and developing preservation techniques appropriate for specific environmental conditions ranging from desert heat to Arctic cold. The medical improvisation required for treating food-related illnesses aboard pirate ships led to the development of crude but sometimes effective remedies using whatever materials were available, including alcohol-based antiseptics, herbal medicines made from captured spices, and surgical procedures performed with improvised instruments under desperate circumstances. The psychological coping mechanisms developed by pirates for dealing with chronic hunger and disgusting food included elaborate mental exercises, group activities during meal times, storytelling traditions that provided distraction from physical discomfort, and various forms of entertainment that could make terrible food more tolerable through social interaction. The seasonal celebration traditions maintained by some pirate crews represented attempts to preserve cultural memory and human dignity despite their criminal circumstances, with special meals prepared for holidays, birthdays, and anniversaries, using whatever better ingredients could be obtained through trading, raiding, or special procurement efforts. The food-related superstitions and religious practices observed by pirate crews ranged from traditional Christian blessing ceremonies to entirely new spiritual traditions designed to ensure food safety, successful hunting, or divine protection from starvation, reflecting the diverse cultural backgrounds and desperate spiritual needs of these maritime criminals. The economic relationships between pirates and corrupt food suppliers created complex networks of illegal commerce that extended far beyond simple criminal transactions to include long-term business partnerships, credit arrangements, and mutual protection agreements that blurred the lines between legitimate trade and criminal enterprise. The technological development of specialized cooking and food processing equipment aboard pirate ships was driven by necessity and resourcefulness, with crews improvising utensils, storage containers, and preparation tools from captured materials, ship components, and whatever other resources they could obtain through theft or trade. The cultural preservation efforts among multinational pirate crews sometimes focused on maintaining food traditions from various homelands, with crew members teaching each other recipes, cooking techniques, and meal customs that helped preserve cultural identity despite their criminal lifestyle and international composition. The environmental impact of pirate food procurement extended beyond direct theft and hunting to include disruption of local ecosystems, overfishing of coastal waters, introduction of invasive species to remote islands, and destruction of agricultural settlements that could affect entire regional food systems. The psychological transformation experienced by long-term pirates often included fundamental changes in their relationship with food, hunger, and basic human needs, with many former pirates finding it extremely difficult to readjust to normal eating patterns and food abundance if they eventually attempted to return to legitimate society. The medical understanding of nutrition among educated pirates occasionally led to more systematic approaches to crew health management, with some ships implementing dietary diversity programs, vitamin deficiency prevention strategies, and health monitoring procedures that were surprisingly advanced for their time and circumstances. The social bonding that occurred through shared food experiences created the interpersonal relationships that held pirate crews together despite constant dangers and hardships, with mealtimes serving as primary opportunities for crew members to interact on personal levels rather than simply as working partners in criminal enterprises. The technological innovation in food preservation methods developed by pirate crews often involved creative applications of available materials and resources, such as using captured sailcloth for food wrapping, employing ship's tar as preservative, coating, or utilizing enemy weapons as improvised cooking implements during desperate survival situations. The cultural fusion that occurred when pirates from different ethnic backgrounds shared cooking duties created unique hybrid cuisines that reflected the international character of these criminal organizations and demonstrated the remarkable creativity that desperate hunger could inspire among people from diverse cultural traditions. The economic calculations involved in balancing food procurement costs against other operational expenses required sophisticated understanding of markets, seasonal price variations, and the relative value of different provision types, skills that successful pirate captains often acquired through expensive trial and error experiences that could determine crew survival. The psychological impact of food abundance following successful raids was often as disruptive as chronic scarcity, with crews gorging themselves to illness and waste, creating boom and bust nutritional cycles that could be almost as dangerous as steady starvation in terms of crew health and operational effectiveness. The environmental knowledge accumulated by pirates in their search for reliable food sources contributed to broader understanding of marine ecosystems, migration patterns, and seasonal relationships that sometimes proved valuable to legitimate scientific research, commercial fishing operations, and colonial development projects throughout the Atlantic world. The social mobility opportunities available within pirate crews were sometimes tied to food-related expertise, with crew members who demonstrated exceptional ability in hunting, fishing, cooking, or food preservation, potentially advancing in rank and status regardless of their social background or previous maritime experience. The psychological warfare tactics employed by some pirate crews included strategic use of food distribution and starvation to break the will of captured enemies, besieged settlements, or rebellious crew members, demonstrating how control over food supplies could be weaponized for political and military purposes in maritime criminal enterprises. The seasonal weather patterns that affected pirate food procurement were closely monitored by experienced captains who understood the relationships between climate conditions, food availability, and successful raiding opportunities, with successful pirate operations often requiring precise timing to coincide with optimal environmental conditions. The technological adaptation required for effective pirate food procurement included modifications to ships for improved storage capacity, development of specialized hunting and fishing equipment, and creation of portable tools for processing and preserving food obtained during raids or foraging expeditions in hostile territory. The cultural legacy of pirate food traditions can still be traced in the cooking customs of various Caribbean and Atlantic coastal communities, where recipes, preparation techniques, and food customs developed by criminal crews have been passed down through generations and integrated into legitimate local culinary cultures. The medical applications of various foods and beverages in pirate healthcare systems ranged from legitimate nutritional therapy based on folk wisdom to completely superstitious remedies based on desperate hope, with crew members developing complex beliefs about the healing properties of different ingredients through personal experience and cultural tradition. The technological improvisation required for cooking and food preparation aboard pirate ships led to innovations in portable cooking, equipment, improvised utensils, and creative applications of ship components for culinary purposes that demonstrated the remarkable adaptability of humans facing life-threatening circumstances in isolated maritime environments. The cultural documentation of pirate food experiences through oral traditions, written accounts, and artistic expressions has preserved valuable historical information about maritime life, colonial food systems, and criminal survival strategies that might otherwise have been completely lost to historical obscurity. The economic impact of pirate food activities on global trade patterns was significant enough to influence shipping routes, cargo composition, insurance practices, and commercial policies throughout the Atlantic world, demonstrating how criminal enterprises could reshape legitimate economic structures in unexpected and far-reaching ways. The environmental challenges of food storage in various climatic conditions required constant vigilance and innovation, with pirate crews developing elaborate systems for monitoring food quality, rotating perishable supplies, and adapting preservation techniques to specific environmental conditions ranging from tropical heat and humidity to Arctic cold and ice. The social hierarchy surrounding food access and meal privileges aboard pirate ships reflected broader patterns of authority, respect, and power within these criminal organizations, with food distribution serving as both reward for loyalty and punishment for insubordination in ways that reinforced crew discipline and operational effectiveness. The psychological adaptation required to survive on pirate provisions included developing tolerance for revolting tastes and textures, learning to ignore visual signs of spoilage and contamination, and cultivating mental strategies for dissociating from the physical act of eating to avoid overwhelming nausea and psychological breakdown. The economic opportunities created by pirate food procurement included not only direct criminal activities, but also legitimate trading relationships with colonial settlements willing to exchange provisions for protection, information, or shares of captured treasure, creating complex hybrid economic relationships that defied simple categorization. The cultural exchange between different ethnic groups within multinational pirate crews was often most evident during food preparation and consumption, as crew members from various backgrounds contributed their traditional cooking techniques, seasoning preferences, and food preparation knowledge to create unique fusion cuisines that existed nowhere else. The environmental adaptation strategies developed by pirate crews for surviving in different geographic regions included learning to identify safe local food sources, understanding seasonal availability patterns, and developing climate-appropriate preservation techniques that could mean the difference between crew survival and complete disaster. The medical knowledge passed down through generations of pirates included practical wisdom about disease prevention, treatment of nutritional deficiencies, identification of poisonous plants and animals, and optimization of available ingredients for maximum nutritional benefit under desperate survival conditions. The technological development of improved food storage and preservation methods aboard pirate ships contributed to advances in maritime technology that benefited legitimate shipping, naval operations, and colonial development throughout the Atlantic world, demonstrating how criminal innovation could contribute to broader technological progress. The cultural preservation efforts among pirate crews sometimes focused on maintaining religious and ethnic food traditions that provided psychological comfort and cultural continuity despite their criminal circumstances and the international composition of their crews, helping to maintain human dignity and identity in dehumanizing situations. The psychological impact of returning to normal food after extended periods of pirate provisions often included persistent anxiety, compulsive eating behaviors, food hoarding tendencies, and inability to fully appreciate or enjoy regular meals. Without experiencing traumatic memories of maritime starvation and desperation, the seasonal migration patterns followed by experienced pirate crews were often determined entirely by food availability rather than weather conditions or enemy activity, with successful captains planning complex year-long itineraries that would position their ships in optimal locations for specific types of food procurement at precisely the right times. The technological innovation required for successful food preservation in maritime environments led to advances in barrel construction, storage techniques, ventilation systems, and cargo organization that were later adopted by legitimate merchant vessels and contributed to improvements in global shipping efficiency and food security. The cultural fusion created by pirate food traditions represents one of the earliest examples of truly international cuisine, combining European, African, and indigenous American ingredients and techniques in ways that reflected the diverse composition of pirate crews and the desperate creativity that hunger could inspire among people from different cultural backgrounds. And now, as we finally reach the end of this epic journey through the dark, fascinating, and often horrifying world of pirate cuisine, I hope you've gained not just knowledge about what these maritime criminals ate and drank, but also a deeper appreciation for the abundance, safety, and variety of food that we enjoy in our modern world. Because every time you open your refrigerator, turn on your tap for clean water, or sit down to a fresh, hot meal, you're experiencing luxuries that would have seemed like impossible dreams to the desperate pirates who sailed the seven seas centuries ago, surviving on maggoty hardtack, rotten meat, and whatever scraps they could steal, trade, or hunt in their constant struggle against starvation and death. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, comfortable and well-fed, remember the incredible human stories of survival, desperation, and resilience that we've explored together. And perhaps you'll dream of calmer seas, better food, and the knowledge that you've just completed one of the most comprehensive explorations of pirate food culture ever assembled. A journey that has taken us from the sunlit Caribbean to the frozen Arctic, from the simple struggle for basic calories to the complex cultural and economic systems that emerged around criminal food procurement, and from individual tales of survival to the broader historical patterns that shaped entire civilizations. So, sleep well, dream sweetly, and remember that every meal is a gift that our pirate ancestors could scarcely have imagined.